As promised, today I'm going to show you a walk around of our Unimog that's parked right next to us. And as I mentioned, we picked this up yesterday at Helgate, where we had it for almost a year for some extensive modernization. So I'm going to go through what we did in terms of features and add-ons, and I'll cover a little bit of the stuff that comes standard with the Unimog. So for those people who know a lot about the Unimog, I hope I'm not going to bore you too much of it, but I want to give everyone kind of a good comprehensive picture of our vehicle and of the Unimog per se. And as you guys know, we're on our way towards Bremen. That we'll get a box put on the back because we're outfitting our Unimog to an Overlander. But let's dive right into our vehicle. So this is a 1992 Unimog 1350L. The L stands for the long wheelbase. If you can look at the wheelbase, we'll check that out later. It won't look that long, but there's even shorter versions for communal service and agriculture. The most common standard model is the 1300. 1350 is a little up model. It has some small modifications. The later 1350s are very sought after because they have bigger, stronger axles, but ours comes kind of with the same axle as the 1300. Our Unimog started as a fire truck. It has just 16,000 kilometers on it, 10,000 miles on it, so it was in very, very good condition. Unfortunately, as fire trucks come, it came in red, so we opted to do a color change and had the cab completely removed, everything done. The color is called Agata Gray. We like it. It's good and light, doesn't pick up the dirt too much, and doesn't pick up the heat too much. So let's just walk through, around the vehicle first, and I'll show you what we have done to besides the paint. On the top, you can see here we've got a roof rack that was custom made for this vehicle. Initially we thought, okay, let's put a standard roof rack on it. They have those clamp-ons to the sides. But then when we did some research, we learned that once you have a spare tire up there that weighs around 150, 170 kilos and in excess of 300 pounds, and then you drive off-road, you have a lot of torque and a lot of forces going onto the cab. And there have been reports of people just ripped off kind of their roof and had a lot of stress damage. And so what the guys at Helgate did, they aluminum welded in a one that's specifically done for our cab. You can see it's got mounting points here and up here, and in the back here and there. So that way it sits really sturdily above the cab, and I don't know if it also doubles as a rollover protection, so we're not intending to test that. But this is a really sturdy construction. We've got the wheel on top, and we also usually have an aluminum box there that we just removed because as we were picking up our luggage from the 2 weeks that we were in here, we don't have a lot of space in the Unimog cab itself, so we're probably going to put our luggage on top there. You're going to see that in a later video once we hit the road again tomorrow. So yeah, on this side, first thing you'll probably notice are the wheels. These are not the standard size tires, they're the standard size wheels. They're the heavy duty wheels, but these are 365 80s R20, brand new put on there. The reason why we went for a bigger tire is that besides the fact that it just looks much nicer, but the more practical one is that it reduces the RPMs at any given speed. So you can either have a 10% higher top speed with the same type of vehicle, or at the same speed you have 10% less RPM, which is good for noise and good for wear and tear for the vehicle. So this is not a race vehicle. Even though we're in Germany, we're not going to exceed the 120 mile mark on the Autobahn with the Unimog. Our Unimog actually is equipped with fast axles, so these are axles that have a better gear ratio for higher speeds. But in Unimog territory, higher speeds meaning more than 50 miles an hour. Right now in the setup, and I'll talk about the gears later on, we can probably match around 120 kilometers an hour, which are roughly 76 miles per hour. But we, as I said, don't intend to do that that much. We want to rather travel at 50 to 60 miles an hour and then have the RPMs and the noise down, and while we're in Europe, also the fuel consumption a little bit lower. Talking about fuel or diesel, The Unimog comes with a 160 liter diesel tank, which is on the other side. I'll show you that later. And what we put in here is a 250 liter second tank. So you have two sources, fuel. One thing, obviously, you want to have range. We're shooting for 600 miles, 1,000 kilometers range with both tanks if they're completely filled. And then as you're traveling through South America, through Africa, or in some parts of Asia where sometimes they mix, a little water into the fuel up to 10%, or you might get a really bad batch of diesel. Then if one tank, goes bad and they have got bad fuel in there, you just switch over to the other one. They're completely separate, up to the front. So I can switch in the cab between those diesel tanks, both for, fuel consumption, also the weight distribution, but also if I get a bad batch of diesel. To make room for this puppy, because in the original setting there's a big, exhaust there, and then there's a spare tire holder. We've got a custom-made Hellgate exhaust pipe. It's really, really compact, as you can see here. Very nice and shiny, gives a nice, rumble. So that, was put in there so that we can fit everything nicely next to one another. You'll also notice, the working lights that we've got in here. This is both for illumination. If you're, getting out at night, you want to see, is there a puddle? Is there, a snake or alligator you're stepping on? And the really cool thing, what you have with this one, is also that, you can detach the working light, and I got an extension cord, and we can put it anywhere, for a magnetic thing. Okay, and besides the working lights, we also have put in for security is some extra locks here. They have a deadbolt in it, so in case you're, hiking, we've heard that the Unimog logs here are really, really easy to crack. You probably need a screwdriver or something more blunt, and you can open it up. And with this one, there's a complete deadbolt on both sides, and that at least gives you some, protection for your valuables that you leave inside when you have to, leave the vehicle, whether it's that you're hiking or whether we're exploring a city in the future. So then, actually, I'm talking about one big thing here. This is, a support frame for specifically made for the Unimog that is lower than the regular frame. So for those of you that know the Unimog, that knows that the vehicle frame, which is actually underneath here, really hard to see with all the wires right now, that one flexes when you're off-road. And you can flex up to 1 foot, about 30 centimeters, 33 centimeters, from left to right, to make sure that all the wheels have contact to the ground as much as possible. The problem is if you have a cab up on top, you don't want the same flex to be on the cab, because otherwise your windows are going to pop out and the furniture is going to fall off, the wall. So what you need to do is you have a secondary frame. In Germany it's called a support frame, or support frame. And what the company Hellgate did for us is they make a frame that is 7 centimeters, which is roughly 2 inches plus or minus lower than the regular frame. And that means that the cab can be lower, the center of gravity is lower, which is good for faster driving, but is also good for off-road driving, because you don't want the vehicle to be tipsy-topsy. Anyway, it's already a higher vehicle. We're right now at 2 meters 99, 3 meters, almost 9 feet of height. And with the cab, we're going to probably add almost another foot to it. But you want to keep the weight as low as possible. So obviously the fuel tanks are going to be adding a lot of weight to it, and we're going to have the water tank in the front here as well. But this frame, makes it go lower, and we actually have to have special cutouts in the cab for that. So you might be wondering what this little fluffy thing here is, because it doesn't really fit the appearance of the Unimog here right now at all. This is just for the drive up when the box gets mounted up top. In Germany, you have to have the wheels covered with wheel arches or fenders. So what they did is they just built out of some wood, and the old fenders from the fire truck part of it, something that were road legal and okay in Germany. But obviously once they put the cab on, this will be discarded and will look much more professional than it does right now. The material for this is the same that's used on the German high-speed trains, ICEs. So between the cars, where it rubs and interacts and tries to cushion the movement between the cars. So this is the same material. So we hope this is going to be really, really durable. Another modification we've had done, but you can't really see it, is an Overdrive. In German it's called a Splitgetriebe from Mercedes. and it's basically somewhere up front. Here you can see this is actually the gear box and I think the transfer case, but in the front where the clutch is, there's an overdrive which will give us another half a gear, and that, again, similar to the tires, will enable us to either increase the top speed by 20-25% or reduce the RPMs at any given speed by 20 to 25%. That gives us, that top speed, as I mentioned, for about 120 kilometers an hour. I think that's everything on this side. So let's go up front, because I know I forgot a couple of things up front. One thing that's really cool that we've put in are LED headlights. As you can see here, we've got twin LED headlights from Hella on each side. And what is really cool about these, picture yourself, you're somewhere in South America or in Africa, and you get in an accident, whether it's with another car or an animal runs in front of you, or even in the US, a deer, and your complete side of the headlights are taken out. Usually the car will be fine. This can take a pretty good beating, but you have no lights on one side, which is really not good for both visibility and also being seen in the dark, especially when you're driving in remote places. Since each of those 4 units is specifically one single unit with regular low beams and high beams, what you do is you've got this side damaged. You take the middle part from the other side, take it out, and put it in on the outside of that. So you still have 2 fully functioning high beams and low beam lights, for future, further driving. So this is really good, both for safety and, legality, that the police in any country doesn't pull you off because you only have lights on one side, just to be prepared. We also have here is headlight covers out of Microlone. This is the same kind of material that they use for rally cars, for the winch shields, for the triple shift and weight reduction. Obviously the weight isn't a big issue on here, but these things you have, and so if you got chips and rocks flying, it'll protect the headlights while you're driving. Then besides that, on the front, we used to have a 5-ton winch that was built in, that the fire department had put in, while we really thought, okay, we might want to have a winch for emergency purposes. The whole winch was about 700 pounds of weight. It had 80 liters of hydraulic oil, and so we just decided to have that taken out, because we learned that if you have a winch in the front, you're only going to use the winch to pull out other people. While that is a noble gesture, I said we really wanted to keep the vehicle as light as possible as we could. Talking about lights, but the other light, we've got off-road LED driving lights up top, as you can see here below the roof rack. That'll give us a really nice visibility when driving off-road. What you can see right now under the hood are a couple of other modifications. Maybe we'll pop the hood later on, but there's a diesel-powered heater there to heat up the engine. If it's really cold, you want to have everything heated up, because it doesn't have glow plugs. It starts doesn't smoke upon startup that much. It's better for engine wear, and you have instant heat once you start driving. Then we also splurged for an air conditioning unit. I'll show you inside how that looks. So we've got air conditioning in a 1992 Unimog, and also very importantly, the Unimog has a 6-liter turbocharged diesel engine. Usually stock, this vehicle came out at 136 horsepower, and we had new injectors put in, tuned the injection pump, and there was one more thing that we did to it, but I'll think of it later. But nonetheless, we now have about 220 horsepower, which is really good. I drove it now back. Obviously, there's less weight on it in the back than it used to be when I drove it up there. But you could actually accelerate, on 10%, 14% grades with the Unimog going, from outside of town up to 80 or 90 kilometers an hour. It was really, really much fun. So I'm looking forward that we have a little more weight on the back, because right now it really is like a Bronco. There's no weight on it, so the springs and the shock absorbers are not tuned for this lightweight, so it needs a little more weight for better driving stability and pleasure. So let's go over here. This you see fairly common in Unimogs, the Snorkel. Ours didn't come with one because it was, as I said, a fire truck, but obviously you got to have a Snorkel, there's no doubt about it. So we have them put in the Snorkel. On this side, there's really nothing modified there. This is pretty much stock, with the exception of another set of the driving light that's magnetic and detachable. And hidden behind here, you can't really see it, is a additional diesel CFR filter that's also heated. So in case there is water, like I mentioned before, and it's cold, the water won't freeze and you will run out of diesel, while you're driving or when you start up. So this has a heating switch that then you turn on, and then below 5 degrees Celsius, it'll start heating the fuel filter so that any kind of moisture that's trapped in there, is not going to cause the diesel to freeze. Standard battery box, 2 standard batteries. We haven't done any changes in that. Here you can see our GoPro holder. No, actually the other diesel tank, as I mentioned, 160 liters. And then let's see if we can go through the garage to go. And given that I will always get the ticks in the family, you can safely follow me. So here in the back, we have 2 major things that I want to highlight. One thing is our gray water tank, and you can't really see it right now because of the high grass, but it's angled in the way that your departure angle is not compromised, so we still have the full departure angle that we have in the Unimog. It also comes with a heater, so the gray water won't freeze, so you can empty it when you need to. And it has a pneumatic opening mechanism, so in case you want to drain it, or someone's tailgating behind you on the Autobahn, you can push a button on the inside and it will open up and leave out. But obviously you want to dispose of your gray water responsibly. We've also got a backup can that's actually open right now because I still had the backup gear engaged. I don't know if you can see it from there. It's underneath there, and it comes with lights, and we've got LED backup lights, fog lights that is required in Germany. And here, kind of where the suspension is, you can see the new shock absorbers from Koni that we also had put in, that are specially adapted for Overland Unimogs with the weight and the typical use that comes with it. And I think we're done on the outside, so I would say we'll go inside and I'll show you a little bit more stuff on the inside. So come on. And I apologize about the many cuts because our camera was overheating, so we'll see how much it stays on. I think on the inside it will be much better. I don't know, why don't you climb on board and I'll come on the driver's side and then we'll walk through the rest of the stuff. Okay. So one thing you'll notice, got new seats here. The standard Unimog seats typically don't even have headrests. Since our truck was a fire truck, it didn't even come with seat belts, which obviously for multiple reasons is not a good idea. So what we have in here are modern Unimog Mercedes seats with integrated seat belts. And with heating, so they're both heated. Unfortunately, they did not have ventilated seat. That would have been the ultimate luxury, but I mean, this is pretty good there. Yeah, they're also, air cushions, so you can set it to the dampening and do all kinds of stuff with it, and it'll, when you have long drives, be better on your spine than a regular uncushioned seat. What they had to do, obviously, to make this safe, they had to put additional, reinforcement and welding spots on the bottom, because now instead of the force being, transmitted in an accident through the cab, now everything has to go through the floor, and you don't want, obviously, the car seat to collapse on you when you have a head-on collision on that. So this is what we'd done there. Then let's go in here. This is actually, and this is just the seal for the back for later on. So this is pretty much standard the way that you seen it in other Unimogs. It's actually less than usually, because in some Unimogs have the auxiliary drives here and some other stuff. This is the lever for engaging reverse, because in the Unimog you don't have a dedicated reverse gear, but you have a lever that will reverse the direction of travel in or near the gearbox. And so basically you press the clutch, pull this up for reverse, or pull it down for forward again, and then you have 8 gears for reverse, just like going forward. Main switch, this is the parking brake. gear lever, obviously. I'll talk about the split and the overdrive here. And the only other modification that we've done here is usually when you engage the lock differentials, when you are in the highest setting, you have the front and the rear axle locked simultaneously. And when you're driving in rough but not extremely rough condition, you don't want the front diff automatically locked, so we had them separate that. So if we engage here, this is standard rear-wheel drive, then step 1 is all-wheel drive with a no differential in the front. And then in the setting number 2, we have only the rear differential locked. And then if we want to get to a step 3, then I'll turn this switch and we will engage the front differential for the really, really tough things. But I anticipate that we might be using that maybe 0.5% of the time. So coming to the dashboard in the cab, this is pretty much standard like you know it from any Unimog. You've got the vent down here below. You got the gear shift indicators, which row of gears you're in from first gear through 8th gear. The standard thing. This is for the backup camera that we have in there. So once I engage the reverse gear, it'll turn on. This is the control for the diesel powered heater that I mentioned before. Got another 24 volt cigarette lighter or power post there. And I'll probably take the camera over because you can't see it from there. Let me just go. Sorry for the bumpiness. Let's see if that works. And there we've got our additional buttons that a lot of the modifications came on. This is a switch where we switch between diesel tank number 1 and number 2. And I don't have a second diesel gauge in here, but it'll just show the fuel level of the tank that I'm currently switched to, so I can go back and forth. This turns on the air conditioning on with fan number, blowing on 1, and then this is higher and this is highest speed. Then the headlights are, I can level them, so in case I have a lot of weight in the back, I can change how high they point. This are the driving lights from up top. These are the working lights. This is the gas-powered heater. And then I also have a air-powered horn, because the usual Mercedes horn is really wimpy. And so this one, gets you heard, especially if you're driving in remote parts where some people might be trying to cross the road or something. You might need a little more oomph to make people aware that you're coming. And this is a 4-wheel parking brake, because as I mentioned, the Unimog came with a winch, and for winching they specifically put in a parking brake that locks all 4 wheels, not just the rear wheels. The rear wheels, as I mentioned, are locked this way, and then in case I need extra stopping power or parking brake power, then I can engage this one. Everything else is pretty standard. This design I think was started in 91 or 92. It looks a little bit more like a sedan that you're used to from Mercedes, not the military look of the early Unimog, so a little more nicely. Oh, and the other switch that I forgot about is this one, which operates the gray water tank opening and closing. Yeah, and then going further here, this is the vents for the air conditioning. So the heating system, the stock one, comes out here, and this is where the cold air from air conditioning comes in. Then we've got 12 volt cigarette lighters here, USB slots for charging your iPhones, cameras, etc. And then we have a second set here. Those are 24 volts, also with USB ports, because we're going to buy a little electric free ice box, and we're going to have this connected here, there. And we've got bottle holders for 1.5 liter water bottles that we can stay hydrated while we're on the road. This is the standard lever for the RPM, idle RPM adjustment, pretty standard on a Unimog. Oh yeah, and then what you can see here is that the lever looks slightly different than the normal one. You can see the wiring coming out here. This is for the overdrive, so there's a little switch, and I'll give it over to Sibylla to show. So there's a little switch here, a lever. So this is overdrive not engaged, overdrive engaged, but it doesn't change the gears right away. What it'll do, it'll wait until I press the clutch, and then it'll switch the gears into the next half gear. Or if I do a switch of the gear and the overdrive, I can actually, if I'm going downhill, change 1.5 gears forward. So that is really nice and convenient, and it goes instantaneously. Just press the clutch, it'll switch it automatically, and depress the clutch and continue driving. Really, really cool stuff. Unfortunately, one of the most expensive pieces of hardware that you need to buy for a Unimog there. And then what else do we have? Up top, this is because it's a fire truck version. It doesn't have the regular turret that the military Unimogs have, but this has a little roof, moonroof or sunroof, so you can open it up like that, in any direction to get some either fresh air in if you're not using the air conditioning, or if you have a lot of warm air that accumulates here, you just pop that up, and while you're driving, it sucks the warm air out. And here in the back, this is actually, and I haven't opened that up, so let's see what it looks like. This is just a cushion that we're using to also take out more noise. You can see it's very thick, and this is where we can go into the back, and there'll be a door from the cab side, sealing that off to the interior space. But this is put in so that the noise dampening stuff that we've invested in here with all this stuff is that the noise doesn't creep in through this little hole here. So good. I think that's it. Or did I forget anything?
No, I think you're good.
Good. I hope you liked our little tour of our Unimog. I hope it didn't get too lengthy. I hope I didn't forget anything, and we'll keep you posted on our progress up north, and then in the fall, when we're ready to pick it up, how the project looks in totality, and then when we have our first trip to see how it all works out. So thanks, and see you later. Okay, there was one thing I forgot. One cool little hidden feature that most people won't realize. Actually two things. First of all, you've got the spare tire up there. How are you going to get up there? You're going to climb over the hood, which is not good because we're going to scratch all the nice paint, so that's not a good idea. So what we have here are little fold-out steps. That means I can go here and then climb up and access both the tire and whatever I've strapped up here. So this is really cool. It's nice and high, and actually think of it, maybe we should put a chair up here so that we can enjoy the sunset when we're camping out there somewhere in the wilderness. I don't know, want to give me the camera, then I'll take a view from up top, so it'll get a little shaky, but thank you. Let's see. I'll give you a view from the top. So first of all, a little view here. Park next to a golf course near Friedberg. And then you can see the Unimog, the spare tire, and the front. And so we got some airline rails so we can flip other things in here. And I can't show you that right now. Whoops. To get the tire out, we have a little manual crane that you put in the hole there, where you can lift off the tire, move it to the other side, unwinch it, take it down, and then lift it the other one up again and put it up top here again. So I'm going to show you that at some other time, but it's really nifty and it can fit right into the aluminum box that we have for this, but right now it's in the garage. We don't want to drive it around while we're driving around town. All the tires are new. Let's hope for the best that we don't need to use a spare tire. And I think now I have covered everything, so I'll see you guys later.